When Danielle James, a poised and successful professional, inquires about a first-class upgrade at an airport, she's met with blatant disrespect and mockery from two airline employees, Rachel and Kevin. Their sneering remarks and thinly veiled racism, especially the comment, "you people," underscore their assumptions about her based solely on appearance. Remaining composed, Danielle makes a decisive call that transforms the situation, exposing the toxic biases at play. The story explores the infuriating reality of prejudice in professional settings and the strength it takes to confront such behavior with dignity and resolve. A poised woman, full of quiet authority, approached the bustling airline customer service desk. Her question, as simple as it was direct: could she upgrade to first class? Instead of professionalism, she was met with condescending smirks and whispered ridicule from the staff. They had no idea who they were dealing with, or the storm that was about to hit them. In less than 10 minutes, the very people who mocked her would face a reckoning that would leave them stunned and unemployed. But how could this possibly unfold? What power did she wield to bring such swift justice? Before we delve into this remarkable story, if you love tales of perseverance and triumph over injustice, be sure to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more inspiring narratives. Your support helps bring these stories to light and spread their powerful messages. Now, let's set the stage at the heart of a hectic airport terminal, where our story begins. The terminal buzzed with the usual symphony of activity. Loud chatter, the click of luggage wheels against the glossy floors, and the ever-present drone of boarding announcements echoing overhead. Travelers hurried from one end of the terminal to the other, their faces a blend of weariness, anticipation, and occasional irritation. The fluorescent lights gleamed off the polished surfaces, adding to the overwhelming energy of the scene. Among the throng of rushing passengers stood Danielle James, calm and composed, like the eye of a hurricane. Clutching a sleek leather satchel, her presence was commanding, yet unassuming. She wasn't ostentatious, but there was something about her that drew subtle glances, a mix of poise and quiet determination. Dressed in a charcoal gray blazer over a soft cream blouse, paired with impeccably tailored slacks and modest flats, Danielle exuded an air of effortless sophistication. Years of hard work and unyielding discipline had molded her into a formidable figure in the corporate world. She had built a career by mastering the delicate balance of assertiveness and grace, a woman who never raised her voice but always commanded attention. Little did anyone know that the events unfolding that day would showcase just how formidable Danielle truly was. Danielle James was not one to crave attention. Despite her significant accomplishments, she preferred to operate under the radar, her actions speaking volumes without the need for fanfare. Yet today, the quiet strength she prided herself on was about to be tested in ways she could never have predicted. Her flight to Chicago, set to depart in a little over an hour, was her only escape after several exhausting days of high-stakes negotiations and sleepless nights. The idea of upgrading to first class wasn't a whim. It was a necessity, a small reprieve she sorely needed. As she waited her turn at the airline's customer service desk, her composed demeanor contrasted starkly with the chaotic energy surrounding her. Travelers jostled for space, voices raised in frustration or impatience, but Danielle stood unfazed, her steady calm a sharp counterpoint to the frenzy. When her turn came, Danielle stepped forward, her polite smile belying the storm of fatigue beneath. She was ready to make her request, unaware that this seemingly mundane moment would spiral into something far greater, a test of patience, character, and resolve. As Danielle approached the desk, she was met with indifference. Two employees, Rachel and Kevin, occupied the counter. Rachel was absently twirling a pen, her gaze glued to the glowing screen in front of her, while Kevin fidgeted with his tie, his focus darting between his keyboard and the bustling terminal behind Danielle. Clearing her throat softly, Danielle addressed them in her usual composed tone. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady but friendly. "I'd like to inquire about any available first-class upgrades for Flight 920 to Chicago." Rachel glanced up briefly, her disinterest as plain as day. "First-class upgrades?" she echoed, her tone saturated with skepticism, as if the request itself were ludicrous. Kevin, catching Rachel's reaction, leaned in slightly, his smirk growing as he said, "Upgrades aren't exactly cheap. You sure about that, ma'am?" Danielle's brow rose slightly at his tone, but she didn't let her calm waver. "I understand the cost," she replied evenly. I just need to know if there are any seats available. The two employees exchanged a glance, the kind of look loaded with silent judgment. Rachel's lips curled into a faint, derisive smile, as she muttered, "First class isn't for everyone, you know." The words hung in the air, their implication as sharp as a blade. Danielle's grip on her bag tightened slightly, but her expression betrayed nothing. She had experienced this sort of treatment before, the veiled contempt, the assumptions based not on her words, but on her appearance. Kevin, clearly emboldened by Rachel's behavior, tapped idly at his keyboard, his exaggerated courtesy barely masking his condescension. "Let me check for you, ma'am," he said, his tone syrupy and insincere. Rachel, barely able to contain her derision, leaned closer to Kevin, muttering just loud enough for Danielle to hear. "They always think they can shoot for the stars, don't they?" Danielle felt the words sink like stones, but she remained calm, her eyes unwavering as she waited for them to finish their mockery. It wasn't the first time she'd faced such assumptions, but today, she decided, it would be the last time she allowed it to go unanswered. The weight of the employee's mocking words hung in the air like an invisible challenge. Danielle felt a flicker of irritation, the kind she had mastered suppressing over years of navigating unspoken biases and blatant disrespect. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Losing her composure now would only play into their hands, and Danielle James was not one to give anyone that satisfaction. She locked eyes with Kevin, her calm but piercing gaze cutting through his smirk. "I didn't ask for your commentary," she said quietly, her tone even and razor sharp. "I asked about availability." Her voice carried an authority that silenced the nearby murmurs. A few passengers in line behind her began noticing the interaction, exchanging subtle glances of disapproval, aimed at the counter staff. Danielle, however, didn't need or expect an audience. Instead, with practiced precision, she reached into her blazer pocket and retrieved her phone. What came next would alter the course of the day in ways Rachel and Kevin couldn't possibly anticipate. Danielle's movements were deliberate, her expression calm as she dialed a number. Raising the phone to her ear, she spoke in a composed, almost understated tone. "Hello, this is Danielle James. I'm at the airport, gate 32A. Can you have Mr. Callahan come down immediately? There's a situation that requires his attention." Her voice was steady, devoid of frustration or anger, but her words carried an unmistakable weight. Rachel leaned on the counter, rolling her eyes in exaggerated mockery. "Oh, pulling out the big guns, huh?" she said with a sarcastic laugh. "What's next, you gonna call the CEO?" Kevin joined in, his grin as smug as ever. "No worries, ma'am," he added with a chuckle. "We're sure someone important will come running for you." Danielle ignored them, slipping her phone back into her pocket, as a faint, confident smile curved her lips. She stepped aside, her poise unbroken, and simply waited. Rachel and Kevin, emboldened by their own arrogance, continued their whispering and quiet snickers, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond their understanding. The line behind Danielle grew, and with it, a sense of discomfort among the passengers. A middle-aged man near the front frowned at the employee's behavior, while others exchanged looks of disbelief. An older woman shook her head in disapproval, her sharp gaze fixed on Rachel and Kevin as they laughed and muttered to each other. Through it all, Danielle remained motionless, her calm presence like a still lake amidst a rising storm. Her years in corporate leadership had taught her that patience was often the most powerful tool at her disposal. She didn't need to argue, raise her voice, or retaliate. She simply waited, letting the minutes build tension like a tightening string. After what felt like an eternity, the echo of polished shoes on the terminal's tiled floor signaled the arrival of someone important. Without turning, Danielle knew who it was. She straightened slightly as Thomas Callahan, a senior executive with the airline, strode toward the counter. His tailored suit and sharp, no-nonsense expression left no doubt about his authority. Kevin's smirk faltered instantly, and Rachel's posture stiffened as reality dawned on them, but it was far too late for them to recover from their blunder. "Ms. James," Mr. Callahan said, his voice respectful as he extended a hand. "I apologize for any inconvenience you've encountered. I came as soon as I was informed." Danielle accepted the handshake with quiet professionalism, her gaze unwavering. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Callahan," she replied. "It seems we have a personnel matter that needs immediate attention." The color drained from Rachel and Kevin's faces as they exchanged panicked glances, Kevin's earlier bravado dissolved into wide-eyed disbelief as he stammered, "Wait, who is she?" Mr. Callahan didn't even glance at him. Turning back to Danielle, he asked, "How would you like to proceed, Miss James?" Danielle tilted her head slightly, her expression measured. "It's imperative," she began, "that professionalism and respect are upheld across all levels of service. Unfortunately—" Her voice trailed off, but the implications hung heavy in the air. Rachel and Kevin's faces turned pale, as they realized their fate was no longer in their own hands. Danielle James stood firm as Rachel, visibly flustered, attempted to salvage the situation. "Wait, this is just a misunderstanding," she stammered, her voice wobbling under the weight of her panic. Danielle's expression remained calm, her gaze steady and unreadable. "Your actions and words were clear," she replied evenly, "and they've been noticed by more people than you think." Mr. Callahan turned sharply to face the employees, his voice crisp and authoritative. "Rachel, Kevin, as of this moment, you are relieved of your duties. Security will escort you out of the terminal." Kevin's face flushed crimson, his earlier smugness replaced by indignation. "You can't do this, I didn't—" "She can," Mr. Callahan interrupted curtly, "and she just did." Rachel looked stricken, her hands trembling as she clasped them to her mouth. "Please, Mr. Callahan," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It was just—" "No excuses," he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Your behavior was unprofessional and unacceptable. You'll have the opportunity to explain yourself during an internal review, but for now, you'll leave the premises." The murmurs among the nearby passengers grew louder. Some looked on with approval, others with quiet shock. Security personnel appeared, their presence underscoring the finality of the decision. As Rachel and Kevin were escorted away, their once confident expressions had crumbled into a mix of humiliation and regret. Danielle, however, remained composed throughout. She didn't revel in their downfall, nor did she linger on their public embarrassment. Turning back to Mr. Callahan, she said with a calm but pointed tone, "Now, about that upgrade." "Of course, Miss James," he replied immediately, his demeanor apologetic. "We'll ensure you're comfortably seated in first class." Danielle gave a small, polite nod. "Thank you, I appreciate it." She gathered her carry-on and prepared to head to her gate. Outwardly, she appeared as unshaken as ever, but the words from earlier, "you people," echoed in her mind. Despite the swift and just resolution, the sting of those assumptions lingered. She knew this wouldn't be the last time she faced such prejudices. Seated in first class, Danielle allowed herself a moment of reflection. Justice had been served, but the experience was a reminder of the ongoing challenges she faced as a woman of strength and integrity in a world quick to judge. Later that evening, as Danielle settled into her hotel room, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She hesitated briefly before answering. "This is Danielle James," she said, her voice calm and professional. There was a pause before a hesitant voice spoke. "Miss James, this is Rachel, from the airport." Danielle's brow arched slightly, but her tone remained neutral. "Yes, Rachel. What can I do for you?" Rachel took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, truly. For the way I acted earlier, I wasn't thinking, and I was wrong." Danielle let the silence stretch for a moment, allowing the weight of the apology to settle. Finally, she replied, "I appreciate you reaching out, Rachel, but words alone aren't enough. What happened today wasn't just a mistake. It reflected deeper assumptions and attitudes. Do you understand that?" "Yes," Rachel said softly, her voice filled with regret. "I've been replaying everything in my head, and I can't believe how disrespectful I was. I don't want to be that kind of person." Danielle's tone softened slightly, though her resolve remained. "Acknowledging your mistakes is a start, but growth takes work. It's not just about changing your words. It's about examining the thoughts and biases behind them. That takes effort and accountability." "I understand," Rachel said, her voice steadying. "I don't want today to define me. I want to change." Danielle paused, then replied, "Growth isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning from it and becoming someone who can prevent these situations for others. If you're serious about change, show it, not just to me, but to yourself and everyone you encounter." Rachel's voice was quiet, but determined. "I will thank you, Ms. James, for giving me a chance to make things right." After ending the call, Danielle leaned back in her chair. She didn't need Rachel's apology to validate her, but she hoped it would mark a turning point for the young woman. Some lessons came hard, but they were necessary for true growth. The next morning, Danielle entered a gleaming boardroom, her posture poised and her presence commanding. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the table where her next challenge awaited. She was ready, as always, to navigate the day with the same resilience and quiet power that had defined her journey. Danielle's story serves as a reminder that respect is not optional. It's both earned and deserved. What began as an attempt to undermine her ended as a lesson in accountability and professionalism. Her calm yet decisive actions showed the strength of composure and the importance of holding others accountable. It's a reminder to never judge someone by appearances. Behind Danielle's quiet demeanor was a lifetime of perseverance, dignity, and leadership. Her actions didn't just demand respect, they inspired change, proving that strength often lies in patience, resolve, and the refusal to let others define your worth. As you reflect on Danielle's story, consider this. How can you approach others with greater respect and empathy? And when faced with disrespect, how can you rise above it to demand the dignity you deserve? If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience and justice. Remember, strength comes from standing firm, and respect is a right we should all uphold. See you in the next story.